A king loses a war. He is captured by his enemy. He is forced to live like a servant. He cleans stables, lowers his head, swallows insults, and pretends he has accepted defeat. Everyone thinks he is finished, but every day, while his enemy laughs at him, he is watching, learning, and waiting. Years later, that same defeated king returns with an army and destroys the kingdom that humiliated him. This is the story of King Gujian of Yue, one of the most famous comeback figures in ancient Chinese history. In China, his name is tied to a phrase almost every student knows: lying on brushwood and tasting gall. It means forcing yourself to remember pain, shame, and failure, so you never lose sight of your goal. But Gujian's story is not just a simple story about hard work. It is not a clean motivational poster. It is a brutal political story about humiliation, patience, revenge, bad leadership, psychological endurance, and the dangerous question that comes after victory. Once you finally win, what kind of person do you become? To understand why Gujian mattered, we have to go back more than 2,000 years, to a time before China was one unified empire. This was the late spring and autumn period. Instead of one emperor ruling everything, many states competed for power. Some fought for land, some fought for prestige, some fought simply to survive. In the southeast, near the lower Yangtze River region, two rival states faced each other, Wu and Yue. To many northern elites, these southeastern states seemed distant, rough, and culturally different from the old centers of Chinese civilization. But Wu and Yue were not weak backwaters. They were ambitious, violent, and strategic. They knew rivers, marshes, boats, swords, and war. And between them grew one of the most bitter rivalries in early Chinese history. Wu was rising fast. It had strong armies, powerful ministers, and a king with big ambitions. Yue was smaller and less secure, but it had something that stronger states often underestimate: a leader who could survive disaster and turn humiliation into strategy. That leader was Gujian. But at the beginning, Gujian was not the patient mastermind people remember today. He was young, proud, and eager to prove himself. Like many rulers early in their reign, he confused courage with readiness. He believed determination could make up for weakness. He believed that if he fought hard enough, Yue could stand against Wu. Then reality arrived. Around 494 BCE, Wu defeated Yue in a major campaign. Gujian's army collapsed, and he retreated to Mount Kuaiji. Imagine the scene. The king of Yue is trapped. His soldiers are exhausted. His advisors are worried. The enemy is closing in. Behind him is shame. In front of him is possible extinction. At that moment, Gujian had two choices. He could fight to the death and become a tragic symbol, or he could surrender, accept humiliation, and keep one narrow path open for the future. For a king, surrender is not just a military decision. It is personal destruction. A king is supposed to command, not beg. A king is supposed to protect his people, not kneel before the man who defeated him. But Gujian's advisors, especially Fan Li and Wen Zhong, understood the hard truth. If Gujian died, Yue might disappear forever. If he lived, even as a prisoner, even as a servant, Yue still had a chance. So Gujian did the thing that was harder than dying. He chose to live in humiliation. He surrendered to Fuchai, the king of Wu. Fuchai had every reason to kill him. In fact, one of Fuchai's greatest ministers, Wu Jixu, warned him again and again, "Do not spare Gujian." Wu Zixu was not being paranoid. He was one of the sharpest political minds of his time. He understood that a defeated enemy is not always a harmless enemy. Some defeated men break. Some defeated men learn. And Wu Zixu believed Gujian was the second kind. He told Fuchai that Yue should be destroyed completely. He warned him that if Gujian returned home, Wu would one day regret it. He was absolutely right, but Fuchai did not listen. Why? Because victory has a strange effect on powerful people. It makes them believe their judgment is better than it really is. Fuchai had defeated Yue. Gujian had surrendered. Wu looked strong. Yue looked finished. From Fuchai's point of view, Gujian was no longer a serious threat. Keeping him alive might even make Fuchai look generous and superior. Killing him would end the story. Humiliating him would prove Wu's dominance every single day. So Fuchai spared Gu Jian. It was one of the most consequential mistakes in ancient Chinese history. Gu Jian was taken to Wu, and there his life changed completely. Yesterday, he had been a king. People bowed before him. Ministers waited for his words. Soldiers carried his banners into battle. Now he was a servant in the land of his enemy. Traditional accounts say he lived in harsh conditions, cared for horses, performed humiliating labor, and personally served Fuchai. Whether every detail is exact or shaped by later storytelling, the meaning is clear. Gu Jian was forced to experience the lowest point a ruler could imagine. He had to appear obedient. He had to hide his anger. He had to let people who once feared him treat him like a broken man. This is where the story becomes psychologically powerful. Because Gu Jian was not just suffering, he was performing surrender. That difference is everything. Real surrender happens inside the mind. Performed surrender happens on the surface. Gu Jian lowered his head, but he did not empty his memory. He served Fuchai, but he studied him. He accepted insults, but he converted every insult into information. He learned how Wu's court worked. He watched which ministers had influence. He noticed that Wu Zixu, the most honest and strategically serious advisor, was being ignored more and more. He noticed that Bo Pai, a more flattering and self-interested official, was gaining favor. He saw Fuchai's weakness. The king of Wu loved glory. He loved prestige. He wanted to be admired by other states. He wanted to be remembered not only as the man who defeated Yue, but as a great hegemon in the Chinese world. Gu Jian could not defeat Wu with weapons while he was in captivity, but he could study the mind of the man who held him captive. That is what made him dangerous. Fuchai thought he was looking at a defeated king. In reality, he was being observed by a future enemy. There is a scene often associated with Gu Jian's time in Wu that later generations remembered as the ultimate proof of his endurance. When Fuchai became ill, Gu Jian served him with extreme humility, even performing acts meant to show total submission. The exact details are debated, but the political effect was simple. Fuchai became convinced Gu Jian was no longer a threat. The performance worked. Gu Jian had made himself look so harmless that his enemy began to feel safe. That is one of the oldest tricks in power politics. If you are weak, do not force the strong to fear you too early. Let them underestimate you until you are ready. Eventually, Fuchai allowed Gu Jian to return to Yue. Think about how strange that moment must have felt. Gu Jian was going home, but not as a victorious ruler. He was returning as a man everyone knew had been defeated, captured, and humiliated. His country had suffered. His reputation had been shattered. His people had seen their king reduced to a servant. A weaker leader might have tried to erase the shame quickly with loud speeches and reckless war. Gu Jian did the opposite. He understood now that revenge without preparation is just another path to defeat. He had already lost once because Yue was not ready. He would not make that mistake again. When he returned, Gu Jian began rebuilding Yue from the ground up. This is the part of the story that matters most, even though it is less dramatic than battles and revenge. A comeback is not built in the moment of victory. It is built in the long, quiet years when nobody is impressed yet. Gu Jian worked with Fan Li and Wen Zhong to restore agriculture, strengthen the population, rebuild the military, and stabilize the state. He reduced burdens on the people, encouraged production, trained soldiers, and slowly repaired trust between ruler and country. He knew that a state is not an army alone. A state is fields, food, families, roads, weapons, discipline, morale, and memory. Around this time comes the famous phrase, lying on brushwood and tasting gall. According to tradition, Gu Jian slept on rough brushwood instead of a soft bed, and he kept a bitter gallbladder near him, tasting it every day to remind himself of the humiliation he had suffered. The image is unforgettable, a king choosing discomfort so comfort would not make him forget. But the deeper lesson is often misunderstood. The point is not that pain automatically makes you stronger. It does not. Many people suffer and become weaker, bitter, or broken. Gujian's power came from organized pain. He turned suffering into structure. He turned humiliation into policy. He turned anger into patience. He did not just remember his shame, he built a state around the lessons of that shame. While Yue rebuilt itself, Gujian continued to act obedient toward Wu. He sent tribute. He spoke respectfully. He made sure Fuchai believed Yue was still weak and loyal. This was not cowardice. It was strategy. Gujian understood that Yue could not defeat Wu in a direct confrontation yet, so he gave Wu what it wanted emotionally, reassurance. He fed Fuchai's confidence. He allowed Wu to believe the danger had passed. And while Wu relaxed, Yue prepared. This is where the story becomes a lesson in timing. The weaker side does not always need to defeat the stronger side immediately. Sometimes it only needs to survive long enough for the stronger side to become careless, and Fuchai became careless. After defeating Yue, he turned his attention north. He wanted to compete with major states like Qi and Jin. He wanted prestige beyond the southeast. He wanted other rulers to recognize Wu as a great power. From one angle, this ambition made sense. In that era, status among states mattered. A ruler who could dominate interstate meetings and military alliances could gain enormous influence. But ambition has a cost. Armies need food, campaigns drain money, soldiers get tired, people at home grow strained, and most importantly, a ruler chasing distant glory may stop watching nearby danger. Wu Zixu saw this clearly. Again and again, he warned Fuchai that Yue was not finished. He told him that Gujian was still a threat. He argued that Wu should secure the south before chasing prestige in the north. But Fuchai no longer wanted to hear it. This is a pattern that repeats across history. Leaders often say they want honest advice, but only until honest advice blocks what they already want to do. Then truth becomes annoying, loyalty becomes negativity, strategic caution becomes disrespect. Wu Zixu was not disloyal, he was inconvenient. Bo Pi, by contrast, understood what Fuchai wanted to hear. He downplayed the Yue threat. He supported the king's ambitions. He made Fuchai feel safe, brilliant, and destined for greatness. In a rising state, truth can still survive. In a declining state, flattery becomes policy. Eventually, Wu Zixu was forced to commit suicide. Later tradition says that before he died, he asked for his eyes to be placed at the city gate so he could watch the army of Yue enter Wu. Whether literal or legendary, it is one of the most powerful images in ancient Chinese history. A loyal minister so certain of disaster that even death does not end his warning. With Wu Zixu gone, Wu lost one of its last clear voices. Meanwhile, Yue kept waiting. Another famous figure enters the story here. Shi Shi, remembered as one of the legendary beauties of ancient China. According to tradition, Yue sent Shi Shi to Fuchai as part of a plan to distract him and weaken Wu from within. Historians debate how much of this story is factual and how much was shaped by later legend, but it has remained popular because it dramatizes a real political idea. States do not fight only with armies, they fight with gifts, marriages, court influence, luxury, distraction, bribery, and psychological weakness. But Shi Shi's story also forces us to look beyond kings. Ancient history often remembers rulers and ministers, but great political strategies usually consume ordinary human lives. Women sent into foreign courts, farmers producing grain for war, soldiers training for battles they did not choose, families living under taxes, fear, and uncertainty. Gujian's comeback was brilliant, but it was not cost-free. No state rises through strategy alone. People carry that strategy on their backs. Years passed. Yue became stronger. Wu became more stretched. Fuchai continued seeking northern prestige, and Wu's resources were increasingly strained. Then came the moment Gujian had been waiting for. In 482 BCE, while Fuchai was away in the north at the Huangqi meeting, Yue attacked Wu. This did not immediately destroy Wu, but it shocked the kingdom. The supposedly broken enemy was not broken. The servant king had been preparing. Fuchai had to rush back, but the balance had shifted. Wu was no longer the confident predator. Yue was no longer the trapped victim. The war continued for years, and the pressure on Wu grew worse. Finally, in 473 BCE, Yue conquered Wu. The reversal was complete. The king who had once been surrounded at Mount Kuaiji now stood above the state that had humiliated him. The man who had served in Wu now destroyed Wu. Fuchai, once proud and victorious, faced the collapse of everything he had built. According to tradition, he regretted not listening to Wu Zixu. But regret is often the final language of failed power. By the time a leader says, "I should have listened," the chance to listen has usually passed. Fuchai died by suicide, and Wu disappeared as an independent power. Gujian had won. On the surface, this is the perfect revenge story. A king is defeated. He suffers. He waits. He rebuilds. He strikes back. He wins. But if we stop there, we miss the most interesting part. Because Gujian's story does not end cleanly. After victory, he became one of the dominant rulers of his age, sometimes remembered as one of the last great hegemons of the spring and autumn period. Yet the people closest to him understood that success could be dangerous. Fan Li, one of the key advisors behind Yue's rise, chose to leave after the conquest of Wu. Later tradition says he recognized something unsettling about Gujian. The king could share hardship, but might not share prosperity. There is a famous Chinese idea connected to this kind of political danger. When the birds are gone, the bow is stored away. When the rabbits are dead, the hunting dogs are cooked. In simple terms, once a ruler no longer needs the people who helped him win, those people can become threats. Fan Li left before victory could turn against him. Wenzhong stayed. According to tradition, his ending was tragic, and Gujian eventually forced him to die. This is why Gujian is not a simple hero. He was disciplined, intelligent, and unbelievably patient. He rebuilt a defeated state and defeated a stronger enemy, but he was also shaped by suspicion, humiliation, and revenge. The traits that helped him survive may have made him dangerous after he succeeded. A man who spends years hiding his true thoughts may not easily become open. A ruler who survives through distrust may not easily trust. A king who builds his life around revenge may struggle to know what to do after revenge is complete. That is what makes Gujian unforgettable. He is not a perfect moral example. He is a study in transformation. Defeat changed him. It made him stronger, but not necessarily softer. It gave him discipline, but also shadows. It taught him patience, but perhaps also deep suspicion. So what does this story mean now for people who are not ancient kings and do not command armies? First, defeat is information. Gujian's early failure exposed the truth. Yue was not ready, and he had overestimated courage. Instead of treating defeat only as shame, he treated it as data. What failed? What was missing? What must be rebuilt? That is where recovery begins. Second, patience is not passivity. Gujian waited for years, but he was not doing nothing. Yue was farming, training, organizing, negotiating, observing, and planning. Real patience is active. From the outside, it looks quiet. Inside, it is disciplined motion. Third, arrogance can destroy a winner faster than weakness destroys a loser. Wu defeated Yue, but Fuchai stopped learning after victory. He ignored Wu Zixu, trusted flatterers, chased prestige, and underestimated a humiliated enemy. In the end, Wu's collapse began not on the battlefield, but in the king's decision-making. Fourth, revenge can fuel a comeback, but it cannot be the whole foundation of a life. Gujian's desire for revenge helped him endure, but after Wu was gone, the darker side of his rule became more visible. A goal built only on resentment may keep you alive in hardship, but it may not teach you how to live after success. This is why lying on brushwood and tasting gall remains powerful, but also dangerous if misunderstood. It does not mean you should worship suffering. It does not mean humiliation automatically makes you wise. It does not mean revenge is always noble. The deeper lesson is this: Memory must become discipline. Pain must become structure. Anger must become strategy. And survival must eventually become something larger than payback. Gujian's life belongs to a harsh world of war, betrayal, ambition, and fragile states, but the pattern is still recognizable. People lose, leaders fail, companies collapse, countries decline, careers fall apart. The first reaction is usually emotional: shame, anger, denial, blame. But recovery starts when emotion becomes analysis. Fuchai won and stopped learning. Gujian lost and started learning. In the long run, that difference changed history. King Gujian of Yue is remembered because he refused to let defeat become his final identity. He tasted bitterness so he would not forget. He endured humiliation so his state could survive. He waited until the enemy grew careless. Then he turned patience into power. But his story leaves us with a final question, and it is the question that makes the whole story more than a revenge tale. It is easy to say you want to rise after defeat. It is harder to decide what kind of person you will become after you rise. Gujian mastered his enemy. The harder question is whether he ever fully mastered himself.